Hey guys, Kev here, and I wanted to talk about knife pivot lube. So it's been a while since I've really just talked about knife pivot lube. I mention them during videos all of the time because I do a lot of disassembly videos and I use their products constantly in those videos. They are I think the best knife maintenance brand out there when it comes to lubes and stuff like that. They have a lot of cool stuff. Now, I don't have everything here. I do own a lot of their stuff, use a lot of their stuff. I'll try to mention anything else I can think of. I do have an affiliate link and a coupon code to their website. So if you guys want to check them out, you can go to knifepivotlube.com and use the code LeftyEDC. There's going to be an affiliate link in the description that you can use. It does help the channel if you use it or use the code. Also helps you, obviously, because you get the 10% off or whatever the discount is at the time. But you don't have to. You can use whatever lube you want. Go wherever you want to buy it. I just want to tell you about it, right? Because I love their shit. I reached out to them because I really like their stuff, and I asked them for the link. That was years ago. It was the first link or code I ever got. So just want to put that out there. But real quick, before we get into the lubes, let's talk about a couple products. Knife Shield. This is one of my favorite products that has come out in the recent past. I recommend that every single person own a bottle of this. It does two things that are really, really cool. So the first one is it protects your blade from rusting. So basically, you just shake it up because it will settle. So just make sure you shake it up. It kind of looks like milk, which is sort of weird, but also not. And you want to take your blade out, and then you just spray some on there. So I'm going to do this just to the side so that I don't get it on my mat. But basically, I just sprayed it on, right? And then I like to rub it in. You don't have to do this. You can just wipe it. But I like to rub it in, and then I'll get a little bit into the holes. That's what she said. Get the white stuff in the holes. And I'll just get it all up everywhere. Sexual innuendos galore. And then you just wipe it off. Okay? So, now what that did was it left a protective layer on the blade, right? You don't want to go using like alcohol now and clean that off because you'll remove the layer. But essentially what it does is add a layer of protectant so that you don't have rusting with your blade. Now, it's not going to completely stop rusting. It just helps you a little bit more, and it will help prevent it, okay? It's not something that removes rust. It just helps prevent rust. Think like EDCI or something like that, or just putting mineral oil on your knife. It's kind of like that. But my favorite thing that Knife Shield does actually is remove gunk. So if you have a knife blade that has like tape on it or something, I wish I had one that did. I was using this earlier. Nope. Shit. I don't think I have any blades with gunk on them at the current moment. Let me see. Because I clean them. I literally clean them with this all the time. So we have a little bit on here. Yeah. Okay. So this has just a little bit on it. But imagine that this was covered in tape, right? See that down here? Tape residue. It's near the tip as well. It's just leftover residue. Actually, I have a box here. Let's see. See if I can't get some shit onto this. Right here. Best thing to do would be to cut through the tape. I really don't want to just waste the box, but I may have to here. Let's see if I can do this. There we go. All right, that should do. All right, I'll have to throw that box away. Sacrifice. So you can see there's some shit on here now, right? This is tape. This is not just coming right up. I'm not rubbing this off, okay? All right. So that's what this stuff does best, is it removes that shit. Let me just spray it off camera again. Okay, don't need a ton of it. And again, I rub it in. You don't have to. They say you can just wipe it right off, but I like to rub it in. I just think that makes sense. And then I get it on the spine, in the hole, as so she said, just so that that rust preventative part of it also takes effect. But now, I just take my wipe. I don't have to do anything crazy, and I just wipe it off. I just give it a little bit of a scrub while I'm at it. You know, it's not like fucking straight magic, but it's essentially magic. Like, I just do this. That's all I did. Gone. No more tape residue. It is fucking amazing. It's the coolest shit since sliced bread when it comes to that, because how many times have you spent time under the sink or using like just dish soap and fucking, you know, scraping your blade or trying to get tape gunk off or whatever? This stuff just instantly removes it. And then it also keeps a layer of rust preventative on there. By the way, this is the Spyderco Native 5 in fluted carbon fiber. And this is the best Spyderco on the planet. The best washer knife on the planet. The best backlock on the planet. Y'all can fight me. Okay, so anyway, that's Knife Shield. I love this shit. Everybody should own some. I just opened this bottle, and I had the other one for over a year. And I use it all the time, so it's not going to, like, run out, you know? The other thing they sell is a rust eraser. It's literally what it sounds like, a rust eraser. So let's say this knife right here, I'm not going to demonstrate this one, but let's say this knife had some rust spots on it because I had it in my pocket, and I sweated and whatever, right? I didn't use my Knife Shield, let's say. You can take this rust eraser and just literally like a pencil eraser, and it'll just remove rust. Unless it's super deep pitted rust, it'll come off. The only thing you need to be careful of is the finish. Sometimes it can like make your finish look a little bit different, so it's always good to test it somewhere. But I've really had no issue with that. I think like bead blast is the only finish I've had issues with. Like belt satin, hand satin, I haven't had it mess up the finish at all. So I would double check, but the rust eraser is also a phenomenal product to have laying around, because you can just you don't have to use Flitz polish and like rip your whole finish off, right? So that is the rust eraser. And then there's these little microfiber Q-tips. I love these things to death. I use them daily. I use them in every disassembly. They get into places like down here, right, to clean this area off, clean in here. They get into areas like if you have a crossbar lock, like down into the axis bars, down behind the stop pin. When you have the knife apart, they're really good for getting into a detent hole and cleaning those areas, a bearing pocket and cleaning those kind of corners out and things. They're just really, really handy. You can see just from what I showed you there, I picked up a bunch of shit. They're also good for applying lube. So getting into the lubrication, the main part of this video, Knife Pivot Lube has 4 lubrications. I only have 3 here because the other one is in the other room and it's less used. But they have a dry lube. So basically for scenarios where you don't want to have liquid or you don't want gunk to be able to build up on something, you can use dry lube. And essentially it's what it sounds like. You put it on and it evaporates and leaves like a lubrication residue. And it will kind of give you the same benefits of lube without being wet. So it can't pick up stuff. One of the great things about KPL in general is that their formula does not allow gunk to really get into it. It kind of keeps the gunk in the formulation, so to speak. Keeps it wet so that the gunk can't get stuck in anywhere and mess up your action. It keeps it in suspension, I believe is the way they word it. But anyway, the dry lube is cool. I use it on like fidget toys, and I've used it on, trying to think what else I've used it on. Mostly just fidget toys. Knife-wise, I haven't really used it. I think I might have used it on like the Winter Blade Factor because of the magnets. I think I use it on that. But the main lubrications they have are these three. They have KPL Ultralight, which is a 5-weight oil. Then they have KPL Original. This is the original, and that is a 15-weight oil. And then they have KPL Heavy, which is a 75-weight oil. So, if you are familiar with Nano Lube, what is it called? Nano Lube? Nano something. I've used it in the past. Great product. I don't like the dispenser on it because it tends to leak, and you just end up, it just sucks later on. But they come in, I believe, 5, 10, and 85. This is 5, 15, and 75. So very similar to the Nano Lube that you've seen out there in the past. But this is much more affordable. These are usually like 12 or 13 bucks for a bottle, and then you can buy a whole set for like 25 bucks, and these last forever. I mean, I literally have had to throw them away because I use them in videos, right? And I want you guys to see the labels. I've had to throw them away where they're still like 3/4 full just because the labels started wearing, and I want you guys to be able to read the label. They actually updated their bottles so that the labels don't wear as easily because they last so long. So, you know, 25 bucks sounds like a lot for some maintenance stuff, but you'll get a full set and it'll last you years, unless you overuse it, which you shouldn't, right? So the ultralight oil is a 5-weight oil. What does that mean, Kev? So anybody who doesn't know, you know, how these things work, let me grab a piece of paper and I'll show you. So the weight of the oil basically tells you how fluid it is, right? So if I take this 5-weight oil and you can see it's already coming out, it wants to come out. And I hold this paper, look how fast, right, it's moving down the paper, right? It's almost all the way to the bottom of the paper. It's leaving a trail, so it's slowly dissipating as well as it gets sucked up. So it might not drip at the end here, but you get the point. It shoots down there. I believe the weight is kind of synonymous with viscosity, how, you know, wet it is. Here's the original, 15 weight. Also likes to move, also likes to drip out. It's one thing I don't like about the dispenser. But you can see it's moving as well, but not as quickly as this ultralight oil was, right? The ultralight was moving much faster. You can see the 5-weight is going to catch up probably to the 15-weight. Because it's 3 times thinner, essentially, or however the terms are for weights on liquid. I'm not an expert, sorry. And this is 75 weight. So this doesn't just come out. It takes a little bit of coaxing. And there you go. You can see it kind of stacks up, thickens up. And this is going to take much longer to move down the page. It will, slowly but surely, eventually, probably move down. I didn't put a lot on there, but I'm just trying to prove my point. I can put a little more, I guess. There you go. All right, so you can see the thickness is kind of the point here, right? Ultralight, original, and heavy. And then they're good for different things. So having a 5-weight super thin oil is really good for automatic knives. In my opinion, they're best for that. You use them on OTFs and automatics. I just put a little dot on the side, on each side and the top and bottom of an OTF. Don't overuse it, just a little bit, and that will really do well in an OTF, in my opinion, in my experience. Some people can't not overuse, so they put too much and they gunk up their knife, and then they complain that the oil didn't work. but it's usually just because they put too much. You just need to be gentle with it. Put a little bit, a dot on each side and on the top and bottom of an OTF. So automatic stuff like that. I also like to use them on slip joints to either get into the washers, because on a slip joint you can't really take it apart every time you want to maintain it. It's just not as easy, because once you take the spring off, the blade off the pivot, the spring will just and then trying to push that spring back up, you know, it's just a pain. So it's usually easier to maintenance a slip joint by just using like compressed air and oil and shit like that. Just let it work itself out. And to get some oil down into the washers, you just take the ultralight and kind of put it like up here, squeeze it a little bit, and let it kind of drain into the side of the frame there. See how it'll soak in, and then you just let it stand like this, so it's kind of seeping, just like we saw it seep down the paper. It's going to seep down into the washer, right? And then you can work it in, and that's one way you can get a little bit of oil onto your washers for a slip joint. Another place I like to put ultralight on a slip joint is on the spring, on the back of the spring here. So what I do is I take a Q-tip, one of these microfibers, and I'll set the spring like this so it's kind of sticking up a little bit, and then I'll just run this Q-tip down the back here on both sides. Run it down the back like that, right? And you're gonna end up with excess. That's fine. Just open and close it a couple times. Try not to touch it. Open and close it. Right? And then you'll see it got most of it actually soaked in. I'll just wipe this off here. And now I've got oil along the spring, keeping that nice and fresh. Right? And then that's pretty much it for ultralight. That's what I like to use it for. Slip joint, springs, and washers, and then on OTFs and automatics. KPL original for me is best used on bearings. So this is what I use for pretty much all of my bearings. If you watch any of my disassemblies, I'll take the knife apart, and then when I put the bearings back in, I'll do this. And I'll rub the KPL original in my fingers, and then I'll put the bearing in. And I'll do this, and then I'll flip it over. I'll do this, and then I'll place it in the knife. And the reason I do that is I can get the KPL onto the washer or the bearing without having to spray. I don't have to put a bunch in the bearing pocket and do all this shit, because then it ends up seeping all over the place. And that's what we don't want, right? We just want enough to cover the bearing. So you just do it in your finger and then place it in. But I use it for bearings. It's pretty much the majority of what I use KPL original for. So I probably use this the most because I'm usually lubing up bearings, right? It also works on washers and such, and I will also use it on slip joints. So depending on the slip joint, this one is a smaller slip joint. I don't know why this matters to me, but it just has I don't know. I just feel like a little bit of a lighter oil makes more sense here. So what I'll do is I'll take the KPL original, put it on a Q-tip, and then I'll put it right here on the tang corners of the slip joint. Here. And then open, close, work it in. So the ultralight I use to get into the washers and onto the back of the spring. The original I'm using now to get onto the tang corners, which is what's contacting the spring, opening and closing. Gives it a nice smooth pop. So those are the things I will use KPL original for. And then KPL heavy I use for two things. KPL heavy I use almost as much as I use original, because every time I take a knife apart, I put original on the bearings and I put heavy on the detent track. So the detent track is the part where the detent ball is riding, right? So there's that track in here. that you'll see on a knife. And that's where the detent ball is going, right? So when you take the knife apart, you can put a little bit of KPL heavy on that track, just a little bit. If you need to apply it while the knife is put together, so sometimes you'll start feeling your knife feel gritty. 90% of the time when your knife is gritty, it's not the bearings. People always think it's the bearings. They're gritty. It's really your detent ball is like dry. Like it's dry. Think about it. It's a ceramic ball rubbing on steel. If it's dry, it might be a little gritty. So what you do, once again, we take our Q-tip, KPL microfiber tip. We put a little bit of KPL heavy on there. And then we'll look for that detent ball. So you see that ball right there? Right there? Hope you can see that. Take the KPL heavy, and this Q-tip fits in here, and you just rub it onto that ball, so she said. And then you just open and close your knife a few times to work that in. You hear it? That's the detent rubbing on the detent track. So the KPL heavy allows that to smooth out, right? And you'll notice once you get heavy onto a detent track that was dry, the knife will be much smoother. You'll just feel it. It'll just smooth out. It's a beautiful thing. And then one thing you just want to watch out for, again, use one of these Q-tips, is transfer, because sometimes that detent ball is jumping back and forth off the blade and on the blade. You might get some right here. So you just clean this area every once in a while, and that'll keep it nice and clean and stop you from having any type of lock stick. So the last thing I use it for is what I showed you earlier on here, where I used original. I will use heavy on a little bit of a larger slip joint, because I think a larger slip joint can handle a little bit more viscosity, a little bit thicker lube. So I will use that on these tang corners. I actually applied it earlier today on here. I put the KPL ultralight on the spring and in the washers, and this thing is absolutely singing. I mean, you can see it bounce, right? Just wonderful walk and talk on here. And a lot of that is thanks to KPL. So there you go. That's a rundown of what I use each of the lubrications for. I do recommend you get all of them. It's not that expensive to get all of them. And I do recommend these Q-tips as well. They're fantastic. I recommend the knife shield. You know, if they have some kind of bundle, it might be worth it to you. You know, I sound like a salesperson over here, so I'll chill out a little bit. But I do really love their stuff. I give away their products on almost every live stream I have. So come check out the live streams on Thursday nights and every other Saturday on the channel. And you might be able to win some of these that way. And again, the link is down below if you want to use it. Lefty 10 will work over at the website. But again, that's all up to you guys. I'm just here to tell you about it. And I just felt like it had been long enough. I just did a skiff video talking about why I use skiff bearings, why I think they're good to put in your knives. And I thought a KPL video would be smart as well. It's just been a long time since I've talked about it. And we have a lot of new people here, which I appreciate. So if you're new to the channel, subscribe. If you're not, subscribe anyway. If you haven't, I don't know what I'm talking about. Hit the like button. Leave me a comment. Let me know if you use KPL. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. I know there's a lot of other options out there, but KPL is kind of a one-stop shop. They have everything you need, and they make it simple. And honestly, I have tried other stuff. I've tried Gunny Glide. I will admit that was early on, so maybe it's changed. I've tried the nano oils, and I do love nano oil, but I do think KPL is superior. Even though I don't necessarily think this is the best applicator in the world, I do think it's better than the nano oil one. It tends to last longer before it starts running or causing any issues. And if you take care of it, just leave it upright, right? Don't squeeze it to hell. Like, just be smart with it. I think they'll last super long for most people. the average person who isn't doing 8 disassemblies a week or whatever like me, you know. The other thing I would say is just always use less than you think. You do not need a lot. If you put too much, you got to clean up all this shit. If you put too little, maybe you just got to add a little more, it's just a little bit easier. So there it is. I love you guys. I hope you have an absolutely fantastic day, and I will catch you later.